because they trap heat. And basic human evolution has taken into account when it comes to our bodies. People with darker skin have what feature that you notice on their face the most? What is the one feature that darker people, a bigger nose? You know why this is? So picture your body being darker. You're out in the sun. What does that do to your muscles? It fatigues them faster, right? What powers your muscles?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. Your body compensated for darker skin colors by giving you a nose capable of taking in more oxygen than, say, someone with a lighter skin tone who doesn't need that compensation. Features like that are what people look for. And it gets to a point where it's not just your ancestry, but facial features that determine that as well. Because take a Hispanic person. Even if he had no African descent, he would still have a wide nose because some Hispanics have darker skin tones. He would have a wider nose. And by that, he would also fall into the category of the one-drop rule. That's why I said it gets kind of generic and specific all at the same time. Because what it comes down to isn't just your ancestry, but also comes down to racial traits. Racial traits. That's another reason why we chose Abraham Lincoln. You can pretty much see it if you look at it close enough, right? Everyone, all right, next. The formula of black.
The formula of black, at first we have this question, how you can consider as a black person. The National Unity believe that for each black person, it refers to their family tree. It's not about their how they appear. Maybe someone is white, but we know that they have like one drop blood of the black person in their family tree. Because of that, we consider them as a black person. Referring to common knowledge that all community have, each state began to find out what's the exact amount of blood that each person can have to consider as a black person. Native American include the people that have less than 1/16th amount of black blood. That it means that even they have more than 1/16th black blood in their blood in their ancestors. Yeah. Also, they look white, but people they think they are black, and they have an attitude with them as a black person, especially in the segregation era. This is.
So I get what she's saying, right? Each state, even though it was federally governed as what black would be determined by, the state was given the option, like we do now with most of our laws, they can add to and change it and specify it even more. And some states did just that. Some states made it general enough to where any ancestry in your blood would make you black. Others decided that it'd be 1/8, some 1/16, some 1/32. But the general consensus amongst the federal courts was any ancestry. And that's just basically what she was saying. And during the Jim Crow era, what they did was include Native Americans out of a fear that someone of light skin color could pass as a white. So they included a very specific number of Native Americans. So if you were 1/16th Native American or less, mixed with nothing else, you could pass as a white person by law. But if you had that 1/16th combined with something else, you've lost the right. Or if you had more than 1/16th, you would still lost the right, and you would still be considered black. You understand? Well, we'll get to that later when we're talking about the bar that puts on unity or assimilation. Next.
And each state has their own formula. For example, we have like 1/16th, 1/32nd, and 1/8. For example, in Virginia, they have their own racial act that is 1/16th. It means that if a person has more than 1/16th, it means that they are black. And in the other hand, in Arkansas, they act 320. That means any Negro blood in their family tree, it means that they are black. It doesn't matter it's 1/16th or 1/32nd. For white, black is black. It doesn't matter.
Then we take a look at modern society and the one-drop rule and how it's changed over the years from these very defined positions to a point where, if you look at it, How many of you are black? Right? All you raise your hands. All of you. All of you. So most scientists now have determined that most whites have a minimum of 5% African descent in a minimum. Most whites. And even if they didn't, it wouldn't really matter because most of them would have what? Native American. And by the definition of one drop, that would constitute you as black. Take your Asian, right? What was your original society? What did it look like before you had cities? What did you have? Very specific word I'm looking for. Starts with a T. Tribe. You had tribe. And that alone, and well, let's look at you, right? Stand up real quick. What part of the world is your family from? Specifically?
Cambodia.
Right? Most of your Cambodians come with what? What is one of their physical traits that you see in most Cambodians?
They have dark skin.
They have dark skin, right? And what does your body do to compensate for your dark skin in a jungle environment like Cambodia?
Get a
Look
whiter
at your
nose.
face. Go look in the mirror. What does it say there? What
Get
does
a
it
whiter
say?
nose.
White nose, right? By definition, all of you are black. But there's a caveat to this. None of you would experience the same thing that, say, Frank is going to experience. So when we first started this class, I thought the teacher mainly focused on black because he was black. And I was using the very, very basic term for black. I thought it just meant African American. And the more we read about certain things like the Willie Lynch theory and the Jim Crow laws, you come to realize something that while we're all being discriminated against, yes, we as Latinos or Asians have an easier time assimilating into the norm that whites have put forth. Whereas Frank, well, this puts it right. America's traditional racial hierarchy. You understand what that means? So a bunch of psychologists in Harvard decided to do a study. And they took a control group and showed them a bunch of pictures of biracial people. They showed them Asian and whites. They showed them black and whites. They showed them Hispanic and whites. And all things like that, right? And most of the people in that study, when asked what they saw in the picture, when it came to the white or black person, they would say they saw a black person. And when it came to the Asian whites or the Hispanic whites, they saw white. While we are technically black, we will never experience the same black experience that Frank or the professor is going to have. By society standards, we are more acceptable because we're less of a threat to the pureness of white. And when you look at the pureness of white, you can understand it's gone past the skin tone. It's more of a mindset now, it's a superiority thing. They see blacks, specifically those of African descent, as a threat to their superiority. They want to keep white pure, but they're more willing to be lenient with us because they think their genes will be stronger. We won't cause them to divert as much. Ours isn't as big of a shock to the white gene as, say, theirs are or hers are, because they're of African descent. You felt that?
No, he broke down, bro. That was the point right there.
All right.
This
This is what we're talking about. Why insist on black? In order to maintain superiority, whiteness had to remain pure.
And the drop of the rule. Then in that case, the one drop rule then became critical in its defense. They made sure there was no value on it being black and maintaining black as an identity. Also, what it means is to be white was to be free of otherness, in general, specifically blackness. In this way, miscegenation was the threat to the survival of their white race. Therefore, the idea was to always keep in line to which one's own purity could be gained through. Most scientists believe that at this point, most white Americans have a minimum of 5% black genes.
So when you come down to it, the conclusion of all this is to understand that even though it has evolved, it is still very prevalent. And at this point, all of you are black, but there's this stigma that has been put on through generations that white is better and that black is lower. And even though you are all technically black, that their version of black is to be considered inferior to the whites. That's what you have to understand. That's what we face with. So when the teacher like puts us on these assignments that black this, black that, understand that you are all indeed black by definition in America. We just don't share the experience that some others do. Take for instance, their skit they did. It is a very accurate skit. Most people will indeed avoid him to walk my path instead. Even though say me as a teenager and Frank as a teenager, something tells me he was way more responsible than I was. Because as a teenager, I was in a very rebellious state. I was more likely to rob you than he was. But they would have avoided him and came to me for the simple fact that I'm just lighter. And that's what we're faced with today. And the definition, while has broadened, it doesn't make it any less specific. So I want you guys to take away that from this.